Hello, BookTube. It's time for a discussion of the third quarter of Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited. It's a read along that was done or started by Steve Donahue and Matthew at the Maybury Book Club. I'll try to put links to current videos down at the bottom for the third section, and Revenant Reads has done an interesting video as well. Sort of his reading up to this point, and I'll try to link that as well. Yeah, so well, it depends on the pagination of the copy you have, because I think Steve mentioned it was 350 pages, his book, and mine's 450. So there's a bit of difference, and he was saying 80 pages. So where I started reading for the third quarter was basically 1926. Charles was coming back to England because of the general strike, which was a momentous thing in the UK here in the 20s, and for labor and for workers. It was like literally a general strike. The idea would have been everybody went on strike. It didn't last that long, but it did last about 9 days, I think it was, beginning of May to the middle of May 1926. But Charles was coming back to sort of help out to not for the workers, not for that, but for the sort of establishment. And we got a bit of discussion back and forth about how despicable it is, a waste of time, and that's always from people who are sort of well off, not so there's a big it shows just from that there's a disconnect between sort of Charles Ryder's set and the flights that at Brideshead and many others. Charles meets I think a German on the way back, coming back to England, who sort of joins up as well, and he just sort of he's quite fascist type, and he just sort of can't wait to sort of break some heads. That's the opinion I got of it. But he gets his head broken by somebody throwing a plant pot on him, and he winds up in hospital for a while. So, but Charles also sort of catches up a little bit before with a few things. He meets Anthony Blanche again, and Anthony Blanche tells him about a little bit about Sebastian, who is sort of holed up in Morocco, and he's living with a young German man who has shot his toe off in order to get out of the sort of army. I guess it turns out he was in the French Foreign Legion, but wanted out. And I find a few things that I find interesting because there's little asides and little references to things that are quite interesting. Anthony Blanche, sort of compares the guy, the German, to character in a film, the German expressionist film from 1923. I think it's 1923, called Warning Shadows, or at least that's the British, the English name for it. And it is kind of interesting because of the choice that Evelyn Waugh made for this film. It's a German expressionist film, but it's set in sort of a count, or at least a high up in society person bringing people together in his house, his country estate, mansion, manor house, or whatever you want to call it. And they all sort of most of them have designs on his wife, and So there's a lot of intrigue going on, and I guess it's been called sort of an early thriller as well. And they just sort of get a warning, basically, from the great beyond, in a sense that if they don't stop doing this, these things are going to befall them. And I find that kind of interesting that Evelyn Waugh chose that film. But anyway, Anthony Blanche compares the German to the butler or the servant in the film, so that's where it came up. However, I think there's a little more depth to it because of the structure of the film and what the film is actually about. You know, a big house, people gathering, and there's certain things that are going to happen, like for future told, and we get that throughout the book. So of Brideshead. So I find that I've always found that quite interesting with that because and I don't know how many people of the time in 1945 would have made the connection with what film that was, because as I say, it would have been like silent films in 1945 wouldn't have been that popular with people. They're not popular now. I only know it because I am a silent film buff, and especially for German expressionism. So yeah, it's just it's a little hidden gem that I like to find in books, and I like you can tell there's a lot of stuff in there because there's references to certain things that are um, that are just in passing, and then like a lot of books that do that because they either expect the reader to actually know, or it's a little private little thing for the writer. I think I don't know, and in this case I don't know if he consciously chose that because of the themes in there, but either way. But there's other little things like he mentioned, and then then he gets a request, like because he's with the Defense League or something like that, and there's a bit of a sort of riot a bit with um, the general strike, and Julia had sort of seen this in the news and asked him to come to Marchmain House because Lady Marchmain is dying and she wants to see Sebastian again. So Charles goes. He doesn't get to see Lady Marchmain. She's too ill. But Julie asks him, go find Sebastian and bring him home. So Charles goes off to Morocco. He finds Sebastian. Sebastian is actually in a hospital. He's sort of just worn out by his drinking, his alcoholism. He doesn't have any specific sort of diseases, but like the doctors sort of said, if he continues, then something will take him off. Like he'll get something, and he just won't have the strength to fight it off. But Charles meets the German that he lives with, and he sort of, yeah, he doesn't really like him that much, and but the German has sort of venereal disease, syphilis, as well as his foot is not healing after a year after being shooting his toe off. But Sebastian, like, is too weak at that point to travel back, so he stays around there for a little while until sort of Sebastian is sort of well enough to go home, or basically kicked out of the hospital because the doctors find that he's always getting somehow cognac and alcohol, so they tell him to leave. So Charles goes back and sort of secures for him to make sure that he gets his allowance correctly, and as a stipend, like just by the bankers, that he only gets a little bit every week, so he doesn't take it all out or get sort of talked into it by this his German friend. So he goes back, yeah, and Brideshead, the older brother says, yeah, well, okay, yeah, we'll do that because he's somewhere where he enjoys. He's with someone he likes, so let him be it. Let him live his life. But in the meantime, Lady Marchmain had died. So and then we sort of find out that well, at the point it's Bridie asks him, well, it's through his sort of father, Lord Marchmain, that he's asked because he wants to sell Marchmain House in London. They're gonna rip it down and build flats. So he wants some paintings done, sort of interiors, exteriors, to sort of preserve it in that way. So Bridie asked Charles to do it, and it sort of opens up for Charles a whole sort of career of architectural drawings, which you know uh, lands him like several books and quite a bit of prestige among that class. But we also at that point we sort of see a few things that are little bits of the themes that go through about the past and everything of how uh, people view, like the whole thing is like he's remembering it, so it's the past that is impacting everything, and the past is important and almost to be venerated, and it's venerations by various levels, by all the characters in there. And Julia at this point is married to Rex Mottram, and he says, okay, well, he wants to get, well, this is Cornelia telling him, oh well, after he's finished his day painting one of the rooms, and but he wants to have one of the penthouse suites of this building for him and Julia just thinks it's like despicable, but he just thinks, oh well, you'll be close to your house, where it was and all this stuff, the memory. But it's like, and he doesn't get it. He doesn't get the fact that it's not, you just don't. I understand it, and I'm trying to put it into words because it's like Julia says, like she couldn't have anybody else live in that house anyway, because it's the past. It's venerated, and to live in the same space of where Marchmain House was, in a different building is just sacrilege to her, and sacrilege to change that, and to disrespect, I guess, the past and the building. And then that is a big theme in this about the past and how you don't disrespect it. And Charles too feels that because he doesn't really fit in with a lot of things. He doesn't like modern painting, and there's the whole theme of the past was better. That's sort of a big thing. A lot of characters and tradition is a big thing. But anyway, we move on then to 1936 approximately. Charles, by this point, sort of hasn't uh, barely had any contact with the Flight family. He's his career is taken off, but he wants to go in a different direction with his career. So he went to South America, and did paintings there, and he spent 2 years there. But also before that, he had married. He'd married Boy Malcaster's sister, and he's sort of fallen out of love with her. Like we find out that it was probably because of an affair she had, but I think it's just he just, he comes back from this, and he's jaded. He's no longer innocent. Well, he hasn't been innocent for quite some time, but he's become jaded. With things, and he's not even interested in his children. He's got two children. He had a boy before he left, and his wife was pregnant with a little girl, or with a girl, and was born while he was away. But anyway, they're on this ship, and Julia is there too, going back to England, because they're in New York, or somewhere in the States. And and there's a bad storm, so most are sort of holed up, seasick in their beds, and Charles's wife is as well, Cecilia, or Cecily or Cecilia, uh, and he sort of rekindles friendship first of all, and realizes that, well, there's a big attraction between them, and that's where this sort of section goes. Um, is the attraction, and his sort of while his wife is ill in the cabin, he consummates this affair with Julia. But also at the same time, this is 1936. We find a few other little things. He meets Anthony Blanche again, at like after he's back in England, and he learns a little bit about Sebastian's not doing that well, um, but it's sort of it just in passing there, but also too, uh, he's doing his exhibit, but it's not this 1936, so like the media is all caught up, all bound up with the Simpson, the American woman, for that sort of corrupted that's sort of the media's thing, and the king, or the king to be, and that's sort of mentioned in passing. It's just that, Mrs. Simpson, and that's all that needs to be said, because even in 1945, everybody would have, when the book was published, everybody would have known the story of this. They would have lived through it. Um, so, and also we find out that Cordelia is in an ambulance. I'm assuming she's an ambulance driver or a nurse, uh, both possibly, and it would be in the Spanish Civil War. And we find little aspects when he goes to Brideshead near the end of this section. After, like, everybody seems to know, Anthony Blanche sort of winds up in England, and within 24 hours he knows about the affair that Charles is having with Julia. Everybody seems to know. Rex Maltrum doesn't seem to know at this point. But he has all these, they call it money and politics sort of parties, in the sense that he has, and they're just talking about, that there's little things of stuff that's going on in the 30s, but little hints, but not as if it's impacting on their lives. Hitler is mentioned, Franco, um, Spanish Civil War. These people have to be dealt with and stuff, but they're just all sort of all throwaways, because the present doesn't really matter too much to them, other than the fact that Julia and Charles are together, and that's all that matters to them. And and the past, and how they sort of came to that point. But yeah, it's just all these themes that are interesting, and it's been interesting to watch sort of Matthew's videos. Matthew's still struggling with sort of the story, and thinks finds it confusing. And Revenant Reed's just not sure of it, and it's like, again, as I said in my first video, it's interesting to see how people see things differently. And to me, this is just a wonderful book. I love the story. Uh, there's a few characters I like, and there's something, Charles isn't the most likable character in some ways. There's things about him that's likable. Julia the same. Sebastian the same. Um, I do like Cordelia. Um, and I kind of like Lord Marchmain because he sort of, he doesn't give a shit. Literally, he doesn't give a damn about anything. But yeah, it's like, there's so many of the themes, and it jumps from scenes back and forth, and I liked the way that Matthew mentioned about that the way it sort of jumps from past to present and things like that when him and Julie are on the ship, and the ship is sort of, it's go rocking back and forth, and it just sort of a pendulum effect of past and present, and that sort of is how the sort of one of the themes are, because the past is affecting the present. um but yeah, the one thing that everybody is of that I've seen, the videos, is the language, the way it's written is just beautifully written. um Evelyn Waugh is just, it's just wonderful. But yeah, I love the story because I love the pacing of it. I love the little things that are sort of, you do, there is some jarring jumps, and I do admit that, but it's sort of, well, okay, I think it works. I think those jarring jumps work. But anyway, we'll leave it there. And I've got, I think, about 100 pages left for the rest of the book. And that'll be next weekend. And um, there's a few people that have said that they won't watch the videos because until they read the book, which I can understand, because there are sort of spoilers. And it is nice to get your own ideas of it first. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of nostalgia in it. There's sentimental nostalgia at times as well, and I guess that sometimes doesn't work for people. Um, Steve was talking about the sort of casual racism that's sort of in it, and thinking that it would be canceled. I I suppose that's always possible, but I sort of think it might be. I think the view that people are sort of disconnected from this style of writing and the period, that might really be what is the doom of a lot of books in the 21st century. People are either not prepared to put in the time for it, and because they won't even bother looking at it. Oh, it's old fashioned. And I think that is a greater shame for things. But anyway, I it's like I said, this is the third reading of Brideshead, and every time I read it, I have deeper appreciation for the characters, the writing, um, just everything, and those other little tidbits, and I keep sort of finding little things, and there's so many other little things that he drops in there that I haven't explored, at least not this time. I haven't really explored anything else this time. um but they are fun to explore, because when you do explore them, it's sort of, to me, they deepen the meaning of the book, and sometimes the themes in it, and just gives a rounder picture. But anyway, I'm sort of starting to ramble there, and I've gone 25 minutes, so we'll end it there, and we'll finish up next weekend. Take care, BookTube.